Yes, good. So thank you. You know, I certainly, as a parent myself, appreciate all you coming out and being interested in what we're going to present tonight. First, I want to preface this by saying, as educators, we never take decisions like this lightly. Tonight is a proposal that I'm technically presenting to the board. Tonight, they're voting on a tentative agenda or tentative budget, which is the numerical figure. And how we choose to utilize that operating budget is what this proposal is moving towards. I'm going to share with you tonight a little bit of context, which I think is really important that you understand, because the finances of the situation are kind of the perfect storm of things coming together. So all I ask is that you be respectful, be open-minded, and know that this is not a final vote on any school closure tonight. But it is my responsibility, as it is my administrative team's responsibility and the board's responsibility, to think about all 8,500 kids in this district. Your children are as valuable as each and every one of the other ones here, but sometimes I have to look at the big picture and certainly make recommendations that service, you know, every single student that comes through our doors each day. So I appreciate you being open-minded and listening. So the goals of this budget have been as challenging as they have ever been. I'm sure that most of you have at some point seen some type of publication or news article about the challenges that school districts in New Jersey are facing because of the funding at the state and federal level. So when we looked at this budget this year, we knew that there was going to be certainly an uphill climb because year over year, the challenges become greater and greater. So our goals in this year's budget are to continue to advance the educational experience for our students through a lens of modern education, because education has changed greatly over the last 20 to 30 years. And I'm not gonna, and I can't continue so I would ask that someone, I know, but there's nothing I can do about the space limitations. Right. Sure. Stay outside practice. I can't continue if you're not going to. I hear you. That's fine. And they've also been told that there's a live stream that they can join on to. So we're providing access. We record and live stream all the video. Yeah, we have a YouTube channel that's published on our website. So I would like to continue because I think the information, if you care about the impact to your children, you would probably care to listen. So I will continue. Our second goal is operating with the greatest amount of efficiency as possible, certainly to be responsible and maximize the taxpayer investment, because you're all paying taxes into the system. Yep, I pay them too. And the last goal is to begin a 5 to 7 year plan where we start to correct some of the situations that exist that are largely out of our control. So here are some of the things that are happening around the state and similar situations where these districts are underwater in the sense of not being able to meet their operating budget costs based on state aid and taxpayer dollar alone. And so they have been turning.
Please stop yelling out in the middle of the presentation. Every board meeting is live streamed.
What is the link?
Ma'am, please stop yelling out and let the superintendent continue. You will be removed if you don't stop.
Well, what is no? She won't remove them. Not done anything.
It's the YouTube channel, yeah, on the website.
The district.
Here, that's right.
It's
What's the link?
ma'am, it's the district's YouTube channel.
So Middletown.
Go tell them to Google.
You stop yelling out. Go out there and help that. It's her responsibility. And the comments are all on YouTube, so.
Yeah, I don't believe there's been any email.
No, I know.
All those emails.
We can solve the problem by moving to a bigger room.
So I can't continue if.
On YouTube, it is easy to tell.
So I'd like to continue in the interest of everybody's time. So I would continue with the fact that this is a very challenging time in public education.
Please stop yelling.
Not transparent.
And they're on their way outside to inform them. They're on their way outside to inform them.
Just for everybody's information, these are recorded and also posted, so people have access to the replay as well. And there will, just to preface, there are going to be additional opportunities for parent forums following this meeting. So tonight is not the only chance that you're going to get to hear this message, see this, and articulate your concerns. It's a proposal, but it's the message as well, is the information related to the financial pieces, which we all can't ignore. That is a reality of Middletown's district in total, which all of your children are a part of.
Budgeting, if all of them are failing.
Yeah, and how long is that gonna happen? And how
I'm gonna stick with the content of the presentation, and certainly if you have additional questions, you can email me, we can talk, you can ask them at our follow-up forums, absolutely. But tonight is about getting you accurate information, so that way you have something to frame your thinking in regards to the proposal. So I think that's important that you listen to that information, because that's what the point of tonight is.
Lie, how can we believe what you're saying here?
So some of the realities that we can't ignore in our budget. We have lost state aid significantly over the course of the last 10 years. And when you look at where we started in 2009 to the present day, it's a differential of about 7 million, but compound it's over 60 million. And that's a reality. When the state talks about fully funding anything, and I'll show you some kind of eye-opening information, is that they fully fund nothing. They do not even come close to funding what they consider is the dollar amount to educate a single pupil in our district, or in the state of New Jersey for that matter. So as we lose state aid, we lose ground in regards to covering the cost of educating a student. So when they say fully funding, I please encourage you to just be aware that that does not mean they fund dollar for dollar the educational cost of funding a student. And I'm going to share with you tonight what we currently pay to educate a student in Middletown, and the differential between reality, what the state funds, and what we do. You can reference all this information on the NJDOE website. This is where I pulled that information. So our enrollment decline, we're not doing a Q&A now, respectfully, because I want to get through the presentation. So we have had our enrollment decline drastically, in school-based kind of terminology over the last several years, particularly starting way back in 2010, when we also had that steep decline in state aid. Over the course of that same time frame, we've lost 1,500 students. We have had a recent demographic study done this year where we expect little population growth over the next 5 to 10 years. That was done by a demographer and solidifies the fact that our population is pretty much remaining stagnant.
What about all the?
That all of those properties are taken into consideration in that study. So we rely on statisticians that work in demography to do that work for us.
That's available.
So we also have only in that time span taken 200 student school building offline. So when you look at our operational efficiency, we are still operating at a capacity and a footprint meant for over 10,000 kids, because that's where we were back in 2009, at about 10,200 students in the district. Right now, we're sitting at about 8,500. So this is important because it is what the state deems to be the adequacy number for determining how much you should be spending per pupil. It is weighted. They start with the baseline of what it costs to educate an elementary student. It's about $14,000. And then they weight it because they consider a middle school, a high school student, and a vocational student more expensive to educate. They also consider at-risk populations like special education, economically disadvantaged, ESL learners, and all this comes into a weighting where there's an average. So when you look at that average, it runs about 15 and change is what the state deems to be adequate in spending for schools to provide a thorough and effective education. And that's the terminology they utilize. Back one. So if you take a look, our state aid, and I pulled a couple of the more drastic statistical years. I pulled 2009, which we received about 21 million rather dollars in state aid, which if you boil that down to how much of that $15,000 they said is thorough and effective and efficient to educate a student is, they only provided 2,000 of those dollars in that year. And as you can see, over time, it has gotten less and less. I mean, certainly we bounced back a little bit because we had a little bit of a bump last year with some of the aid that they built back in, but we've never recouped to the spot of 20 million. And even at 20 million, they were only funding 2,000 of that $15,000 expectation per student. So that's important to understand. The other piece is what we pay in Middletown to educate a student. If you take a look at our budget, this is our cost per student based on last year's operating budget. So the state says 15 is thorough and efficient. Middletown pays currently about 21,000 per student. So if you look at the differential between 21,000 and 15,000, you're looking at a $6,000 gap between what the state deems to be thorough and efficient and what we pay based on our overall operating costs to educate each and every student. So there is definitely a gap there that we can't ignore. Couple of other important pieces that play into the state funding formula and how schools get funded. I mean, certainly S2, which started 7 years ago with this phase-in of a reduction in state aid, to try to balance the equities in the state, which is a completely broken system, in my opinion, is a reality. And it is also based on these two concepts of over adequacy and under local fair share. So the state says that we are over adequacy by about $10 million, meaning we are operating at too expensive of an overall operating budget and moving too far away from what they consider to be that thorough and effective number, which is a big number. When you couple that with they also consider us to be under our local fair share. And what local fair share is what the state has determined the taxpayers should be paying to provide that thorough and effective education. So what the state says is that we are $59 million under what taxpayers should be paying to foot the bill for education in Middletown. So when you look at the over adequacy of 10 million and the under local fair share by 60 million, you're looking at a differential of $70 million. That's a lot of money. And we've done a good job of trying to accommodate those facts, but we are at the end of the road in regards to not having to do something extreme to start a course correction to greater financial health. It is the reality. So some additional factors that are kind of playing into this is the average age of our district's buildings is about 76 years, some older, some younger, some have parts that are younger versus older. But the bottom line is there are a significant number of our buildings, particularly at the elementary level, that need a tremendous amount of repair. And we are at the point in time where we have to determine, is it worth it to rehab buildings? What kind of construction projects are we going to undertake potentially in the future? Because number one, our old buildings just cannot support what modern education is. Putting money into them will most likely not get them to a place that can fully support modern education. We have to start to think about that ticket as a district. We had a facilities cost estimate last year to get an idea of what it would cost to rehabilitate 16 buildings. And it was $779 million to rehab this district of 16 buildings. And certainly that is an enormous amount of money. We will have to eventually put some cost into that in order to upgrade some of the things that are just at end of life. But I am pretty confident that 759 million is just insurmountable as a community. The other thing is capacity. So we ran capacity numbers for our current buildings with our current populations. And our last column is the amount of capacity used in all of our schools. And you can see there are a significant number of our buildings in total across the district that are under capacity. So this mentality of overcrowding, it's not based on capacity numbers. So I think it's important to pay attention to the fact that we have buildings in this district that have space. So class size is a whole different thing because that has to do with staffing. Capacity is room to put more kids. So when you look at those two things, they're two very different things.
Interesting, it's really have enough capacity.
So we also have immediate infrastructure needs in the district. Immediate, right? HVAC replacements, we have lots of end-of-life units, and I'm not talking about rooftop units, I'm talking about in classroom, what's producing either heat or cooling in those classrooms. Certainly we've had some situations where we can't get parts for things anymore because they don't make them. The units are that old. Parking lot improvements for safety, window replacements for energy efficiency, bathroom renovations, security and alarm systems, just across the district, interior and exterior door replacements, and, elementary kitchen and cafeteria improvements. The list is bigger than this, but these were some of the larger items that I thought were important to share. So what does our projected budget include and why are our operating costs so high? So last year we went out with a budget of 183 million. And this year we're going out with a projected budget of 100 and almost 97. And you may say, well, wow, that's a lot more, but we have to factor in inflation. And when you extract all of the things that account for that differential, you can see that they are things we cannot control. Salary increases, benefits, we can't control those, they're negotiated. Transportation increase, out of district tuition costs because we get charged back on those bills. Server upgrades because in order for safety and security, we need to be able to archive video to a certain extent. Property and casualty insurance, urgent maintenance projects that are in the name of student safety. We have curriculum training to continue our initiative for morphology. We certainly have an imbalance of fine and performing arts across the district that we want to dedicate funds to. Utilities costs. Utilities, we just got messaging, I know privately I have as well, 20% of an increase. We're floating that bill across the districts and schools aren't immune to those energy cost increase. And vendor contracts, all of our vendors that we use for all of our services outside of what we provide internally, those costs have gone up. So inflation is passing that bill on to us as well. So when we take a look at what is causing that 7.4 increase between years, it really is inflation at the driver. There are not additional things layered into this budget. Correct. 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 And I did say that's a negotiated item, but we can't control it. No, there's a term to contracts. So our budget numbers. So this year, our operating budget, meaning the amount of money that we can raise as revenue if we go to a full tax increase and utilize every ounce of available revenue that we have, which includes a 1.7 healthcare adjustment waiver, in addition to utilizing a little over a percentage point of bank cap. Even exhausting all of those things and going out with a 4.8 increase, we can only raise $186 million, almost 187 million. That translates into a yearly increase for a home at an average assessed value of about $728,000 and a monthly cost at about $27.85 to be short $10 million in our operating budget. Because if you recall, there's still a $10 million gap due to all of those costs that are increasing for the current year, for the next school year rather. So that's the deficit. It's about 10 million, as I said. So we're at a fork in the road in the district, and our basic operating costs at this point outpace our ability to raise revenue. So we're going to have to do something in order to rectify that, because once we say we can't rectify the budget, the state will come in and tell us what to do. If you're following any of these news stories, that's what's going to happen. And the first thing they're going to say to us is you are operating over adequacy, and they're going to force us to close things. But it will 100% happening. It's happening all around the state. So I'm a believer in there's opportunity in things. And I'm going to show you, and listen, you cannot be on board, you can have an opinion, but the numbers don't lie in the sense of there's an alternative to this, but I will tell you that it is definitely more extreme. It impacts every single kid in this district, and it really does a disservice to every single student that is here. So
We can make that decision.
So what this proposal does is it moves us towards greater long-term financial health. It starts to improve our educational facilities. It 100% will move us towards greater operational efficiency. We'll have the opportunity to balance resources across the district, particularly in special education, so that we don't have special education students zigzagging across the district for programs. It will craft logical sending zones, because there are some geographically illogical things that really impact our transportation costs and things like that. And we'll hopefully move towards gaining spaces that support modern education. So phase one of this plan, this proposal, and remember, it's a proposal. It's my proposal presented to the board tonight, because I have a responsibility to all the students. So our goal is to shrink the district footprint and create geographically logical sending zones. As you heard through my letter, or read through my letter, Bayshore Middle School students would be rezoned for Thorne and Thompson. This would be dependent upon elementary school attendance, and the majority of students would go to Thorne because that's where the capacity is. Leonardo Grade School and Navesink would combine and be zoned to attend what we've known as Bayshore Middle School, which would be the current, or Bayshore Elementary, which would be the current Bayshore Middle School facility. Two, Leonardo and Navesink. So it's not a Q&A, so I just want to get through the information. Two elementary schools would get the benefit of an immediate upgrade to their facility that boasts multiple gyms, a cafeteria, and lots of instructional space, which is definitely a difference from what exists now. I know I was an elementary principal here. I know how hard it is in those small spaces, because everybody vies for the all-purpose room and for instructional space. We have specials in closets. So it is a better, more updated, spacious facility to support education. So what we would be moving to is a 2 middle school, 2 high school, and 10 elementary school footprint as part of phase one. But that would not be the only consolidation, and we'd be looking to eventually get to even fewer elementary schools in the future to try to reduce that footprint even further. So what this does for us is it presents a $4 million reoccurring savings in our budget, because that's how much operationally we estimate in savings by reducing the footprint in this way. It also eliminates the $300 million in renovation costs, and that's a lower end estimate because that was last year's estimate, and those cost $30 million. Those are definitely higher at this point. We don't own Navasing, so we'd be putting money into a school we don't own. That's a consideration. And certainly, Leonardo, the property could become an asset when it's unoccupied. So when we look at south and north sending zones, these would be the reestablished sending relationships. And students who are currently in 5th, 6th, and 7th grade and are having their high school trajectory change would have an option to go to their originally intended high school. So, like I said, this is not a Q&A. There is also more information that will be shared as we get farther down the road with this, if the board does pursue the proposal. Phase 2 would be infrastructure upgrades to secondary schools first, including additional space added to both remaining middle schools and upgrades to the 2 high schools in the sense of, you know, just typical upgrades, windows, doors, HVAC systems, etc. That this is timed to coincide with our district debt falling off. The district will be paying off their debt service, and therefore it is a timely opportunity to potentially examine and pursue larger construction projects in the district because they're necessary.
Would they be necessary if you?
So phase 3 and beyond. So further consolidation of the district footprint and continuation of building upgrades. This is where we start to examine the remaining elementary schools to see if we can condense down to 8, but that would require us to put additional space onto our remaining elementary schools, which would include the addition of large spaces like all-purpose rooms, gyms, cafeterias, things that our current elementary schools, for the most part, do not have the luxury of.
Our elementary schools are giving more. to
Right
other-
now, we're not up at that point in examining this.
Let's take our tax money, take away our school and give it to other students. Right. Other students on the other side of town to get improvements and we can get our schools taken away. The houses that we bought in school districts for the school districts, you can uproot all of that.
So what are some of the things if we don't do this? And I want to articulate to everybody the fact that there is an alternative. There is a plan B, and for some reason, my slide of this is not coming up. So I want to share with you, listen, I have it memorized by this point. There would be a staff reduction of 120 plus staff members across the district. Class sizes across the district in all elementary schools would increase to 28. And secondary schools would increase to 30. We would lose all supplemental services other than things that are legally required. We would be looking at cutting co-curriculars across the board, athletic transportation, freshman sports, elementary band, and the list goes on. All of it. All of it. Listen, these are widespread staff reductions that in order to make up that $10 million, that is the reality. So like I said, we have not gotten to the point where we're talking about staffing right now. We are certainly trying to maintain as many staff members as possible, and we staff to student needs. So what our plan would be to look at those populations when combined and staff based on those needs. So we're not at that point. Our rehire meeting is in May, and right now, this is a proposal. We have an idea of where we're gonna realize savings, but we have not dialed into who those people are because a lot of things come into play. certification, tenure status, position.
Staff reduction for Plan B, which you are not proposing, and you will not tell us the staff reduction for Plan A, which you are proposing.
The staff reduction for Plan A is we're trying to avoid reducing staff. Not zero necessarily. Every plan will include some reduction of staff, but not impactful to classroom. So if you want to impact the teacher-student ratio across the district, then we do nothing. We roll into this budget, but we still have the reality of a $10 million gap. And no one's individual salary is going to correct that.
I've heard you talk about money and how in other meetings and how you've discussed verbiage and how you can allocate funds based on that. Where is our funds being spent? Why don't we have any visuals into
And
that?
that's for the legal fees in the last 5 years.
So, listen. Our budget is public information and is accessible to the public. Like, that's the like, you can go and look on the budget and you can see what that budget is comprised of. And if you look at the itemized list that I shared with you of those increases, you can see what those drivers of increases are.
Well, like the least expensive on that list of
This is pretty
schools,
simple,
so older and more expensive.
Because we did things that were geographically logical based on where there was space in the middle school.
You just left it on that.
Some people put a lot of time into thinking this through.
Reduction on a.
I just want to let people know there is a public comment session and we will allow people to come to the mic, but this is not a Q&A right now.
$10 million as this magic number.
It is the
And
number.
we've seen, you showed us, 8 million is salary and benefit increases. You said
Correct.
they be renegotiated. We know everything can be renegotiated. You just said under both plans that there will be staff reductions. It seems like a very obvious starting place would be no staff reduction, we'll renegotiate and no salary and benefit increases, $8 million, now we have to find two.
We can't control benefits increases. So that item is negotiated by the Board of Ed. So let's look at the advantages. There are distinct advantages to moving in the direction of a consolidation attached to a larger plan. First of all, I will say that at our strategic planning sessions, the number one identified concern was infrastructure, age of buildings, and also inefficiency and inequitable services. So those are parents, just like yourselves, that have come together to brainstorm and analyze what exists in our district. So these are the themes that came through the analysis of the information that the small groups in strategic planning developed. So we can begin to move towards greater operational efficiency by reducing our overall operating expenses, creating a geographically logical and streamlined sending zones in the district, and avoid costly facilities upgrades to 2 of our buildings, and maximize the capacity of larger, newer buildings in the district. We will begin much needed facilities upgrades to all buildings to support education, increase equity and resources and services for each of the sending zones, because right now we are inequitable in those services, gain property to potentially be used as an asset. And what we can do immediately for the students at the potential Bayshore Elementary School is keep class sizes between 21 to 23 with the intention, but not all buildings do have that. So, but being more efficient, we can lower class sizes and try to do that across the district in the future.
In option, staff reduction.
It also affords us the opportunity to create an alternative learning environment for some of our behaviorally challenged students. It is extremely costly to send students outside of district. Tuition costs are one of the drivers of our budget. And our belief is that our children should be educated here, but we certainly need certain service levels in order to be able to do that appropriately. So this gives us a little bit of an opportunity to address some of those concerns and challenges that we've been facing over the last several years. So our next steps tonight, certainly, as I had mentioned, is the board voting on. Jack, can you go back one slide? Yeah, I don't know why. Thank you. Tonight is simply the board voting on the actual numerical value. Our plan is to now have follow-up sessions with each of the communities where we will, be having that Q&A session and also give people the opportunity to be inside those spaces so they can take a look around and just get a feel for what the building looks like. Again, there is no vote to close schools tonight. That would happen if it were to happen at our finalized budget meeting, which is at the end of April, because you have to vote specifically on school closure.
Give us more information on Plan B.
But that's their opening night of their class.
Oh, so we can adjust it. We can definitely adjust it based on that. Absolutely. Absolutely. We were just trying to do these as quickly as possible before the spring break. So we can adjust that, that's easy, and republish it. But we also have a frequently asked questions document that we linked tonight. This is not an exhaustive list, it's a start for some of the more pressing questions that you might have as we start to, work through this proposal. Things like transportation, class sizes, things that, would be on the forefront of your mind as a parent. And certainly if you have anything that's not on there, either email the question, ask the question at one of the forums, because we want to continue the conversation of getting you as accurate information as we can. So tonight is really just about the financial aspects, and we're at a crossroads, and, there aren't lots of options in the grand scheme.
By the staff reduction by
So,
school for Plan
we-
B. Want to see what it looks like when the entire district contributes to
We-
these cuts and not
We,
just us.
we are, absolutely, 100%. That's not something we're gonna get into tonight, but so the board and our finance committee does have access to that, and they are the elected officials that vote on that information. So I thank you all, and certainly I know that they're going to have public comment for some of you to come up and express your opinion, so thank you.
So that all this is off the table, right? Answer that question.
They can't hear you on the live stream without the mic. Someone texted me that they can't hear us without the mic.
Can't read anything either.
Really?
No. It's blurry.
Right? They said they can't, it sounds like it's muted. They just don't have a microphone.
We're now gonna call up Jake Dembowski from High School South to give in the South update.